Hi, welcome. My name is Dale McCluskey. On this video, it's part of my series called Flipping the Script. I'm going to be discussing why it is that balanced dog trainers are losing the war when it comes to remote collars. And on this video, put out by Good Morning Britain, this video will illustrate my point as it leads towards, as this plays out, as it leads towards the pivotal moment in which balanced dog trainers are compromised. They're in a catch-22 situation where they're being challenged by way of this very popular idea that they themselves have come into agreement with in terms of approaching a relationship problem between dogs and owners as a learning-based exercise. And by way of that superficial idea of things, attempt to reconcile the role of influence. And again, I'll talk about this as I play this video. And on this video, you're going to see two trainers, one that is for banning these devices by way of the Dogs Trust organization in the UK. This video, again, in the UK, this issue is really taken off with a impending remote collar ban in England. And the trainer here trying to push back on the bans identifies a balanced dog trainer, Jamie Penrith. And you'll see him here on this video attempting to explain, by way of balanced dog training, the role of these devices, but not very convincingly, okay, based again on the fact that balanced dog trainers are compromised. And you're going to see this by way of the host. Just pay attention to the host comments as this video plays in terms of, again, the for and against in terms of what's happening by way of remote collars.
I have volunteered to test to see how this feels. Now, I've just got to make it clear, obviously, you must never try this at home. Also, I'm a human being, and I know it's surprising, not as hairy as a dog, and therefore I don't really know how a dog might feel, but we're going to try it. And you've got it on the low.
I've got it on the lowest, yeah, I've double checked the one.
Yeah, you've got it on the lowest. Right, I'm going to put my fingers on it. Of course, this would be around the... Okay, so here we go.
Okay, so you've got to imagine that you're a little dog and you're about to run out into the traffic. And
yeah.
I say, Rover, no, don't run out into the traffic. And you say, no, I'm going out into the traffic. So I go 3, 2, 1.
Oh! Sorry. Yes.
How was
okay.
it? How was it for you?
It's not painful, but it is a shock.
Does it push your? Does it like push your hand away?
It makes you stop. You can't think of anything else for those seconds.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Good for you.
No.
Dr. Rachel Casey.
But I'm okay. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
I'm okay.
Yeah, you're
My
okay.
fingers actually feel a bit tingly still.
Even now? Right,
yeah,
okay.
they feel a bit tingly.
Okay,
and
that was the low setting. It's 1 till 4. You're on 1 there.
Okay.
Well, Dr. Rachel Casey is from the Dogs Trust. She's here. She's trying to get these collars banned in England, along with professional dog trainer Jamie Penrith, who says that they can be beneficial if used in the right way.
Do you sell them to some people?
Not in terms of open market. I don't have a buy it now or add to cart button or anything
But
like that.
You don't not recommend it?
No, I don't recommend it. It depends on the circumstance, it depends on the context, and it depends on the equipment that somebody's looking to use.
Why is it not cruel if it causes pain? I mean, for example, what's the difference between this and a whip?
A huge amount of difference between that and a whip. The reason it isn't cruel is because what you're looking at, so if you were to take the example of the dog that's running out in front of the road, if you were to take your goal, the overall aim, in that example, which is quite a stark example, but if you could take your overall aim, it's to enhance the welfare and maintain the safety of that dog.
So here it is right here. Now, we'll talk about this whole thing attempting to reconcile the role of influence by way of this idea of things in terms of approaching a relationship problem between dogs and owners as a learning-based exercise. So I talk about learning-based exercise, about typically using treats, using something to motivate a dog to respond, to make a different choice. Okay, as you're going to hear here in a moment from Dr. Rachel Casey of Dogs Trust, who again is wanting to ban these devices. Understand there's a tremendous movement worldwide to ban these devices. But again, when you understand, okay, the confusion, okay, by way of this very popular idea that balanced dog trainers are in agreement with, that training is about motivating responses at the very beginning of a relationship problem, you start to understand why it is that balanced dog trainers are in a catch-22 situation, why they're losing their tools based on a failure to understand what defines a process. I talk about this in terms of, again, once a relationship problem is underway. Dogs are social animals. The role of influence by way of following a path of a intervention. And again, line all of this up. And again, I talk about the parenting example. And you consider the parenting example as kind of the, foundation, okay, of understanding in terms of, I talk about depth of relationship, the social connection. And again, the parental role itself in terms of, again, how a parent, is, again, advocates, their role in the relationship with a child. And so, again, how you want to see this idea of things as superficial process in terms of, again, making it about, a learning-based exercise about choices once a relationship problem is underway. It's no different than a child that's already selfish and someone coming into your home environment like Santa Claus with a bag of goodies, and the only thought in their head, okay, is how can I get this child to respond so I can package those responses up as is to the parent without, again, considering whatsoever the parental role, okay, when it comes to the relationship itself, without connecting dots properly. Just superficial response that way, making about choices that way. And this is the same disconnect, okay, that's part of this idea of things in the dog training world. A failure to understand how a dog's decision-making process is influenced and governed. Dogs are social animals. And so when you start to understand this issue about choices, about response that way, you start to understand that it's impossible to reconcile using a negative or the role of influence by way of what this process represents. Because you're going to hear this in a minute. So when I talk about the role of influence, I talk different because I'm actually defining what a process is the right way. I'm talking about a intervention. Connecting dots by way of a relationship problem, by way of behavioral issues. Control manifesting. So when a dog's running out, expressing control towards, say, and here you hear Jamie Penrith talking about the safety and welfare of a dog, but not defining why the dog is why a dog is responding that way in the first place by way of controls manifesting through the relationship, then it starts to make sense as to, okay, what's the role of influence? How, tying into, because the whole thing about having a dog make a different choice by way of using a motivator, that's where you get into this whole issue about, why a dog will just continue on the path towards expressive control even when you have a whole handful of treats in your hand. See, this is what it comes down to. What actually is going to be the determining factor, okay, when it comes to influencing a dog's decision-making process. What's the default, idea of things here? And this is the whole thing about bribery. The issue about bribery. So when does bribery become bribery? Well, bribery becomes bribery when you fail to connect dots, when you fail to consider that based on the current state of relationship, how the decision-making process is actually influenced. The role of the dog owner based on, again, how dogs connect at the social level. Dogs as pack animals. Strength and weakness as defined through nature. So, again, we talk about this whole thing about, again, bringing in this, trying to, bring in a negative or bring in influence that way, the way balanced dog trainers are trying to do it, while they're, in full agreement with this idea. Well, they're compromised. You'll see it here as, again, right here, you start to hear it, because here you have Jamie Penrith saying, for the safety of the dogs, for some dogs, trying to separate, because there's no way to reconcile this through this idea of things. Because this sets up a problem. They're in a trap.
So if you were to say it wasn't painful, it was a shock, it made me jump, but it wasn't painful, I'm okay, you haven't been hit by the car that you were running towards in that example.
Well, what's wrong with the choke chain? What's wrong with a lead, a chain and a collar?
There's any form of, sorry Rachel, just
we'll bring you in, don't worry.
Any form of tool, anything, can be used as what you would term an aversive. An aversive is simply something that the dog would work to remove or avoid.
So right here, so the language, pay attention to the language, remove or avoid, alludes to what's called the 4 quadrants. Okay, and this plays into this idea that trains a learning-based exercise. So right here, Penrith is because I understand balanced dog trainers, they've built off of this flawed idea from the beginning by way of what's called the 4 quadrants. This is where you hear a lot of balanced dog trainers, they'll say balanced dog training is more science-based. No, it's just actually, it's more confusing, okay, because they've built off an idea, the idea itself is inherently flawed, that trains a learning-based exercise. Because it does not follow the path of a intervention. It does not bring influence into a process the right way. I talk about what the solution is, a process. I'm talking about a intentional interaction-based method. Okay, interacting with a dog in specific ways, which again, by way of those interactions themselves, bring influence into the process itself, which a dog comes into agreement with. So you might talk about, here in this case, a dog controls manifesting, a dog is expressing control, a dog is, moving towards something, lunging towards something, going towards a vehicle. Influence itself, again, to intercept the dog's state of mind, okay? Dog it's going to do that, okay? The dog is going to come into agreement with it if it ties into the type of a process, I say interaction-based, that makes sense to the dog, okay? Advocating in terms of the role of the owner, saying this makes sense. So I say interaction-based, it ties into a method that, again, at the social level, is consistent. Okay, you're dialed into the relationship the right way. You're dialed into a dog's state of mind the right way. It's no different than a parent who's interacting with a selfish child in meaningful ways. They're in their airspace the right way. So it's a type of power play. I talk about the context of a power play, in terms of a child, even a child not liking. So the not liking part is the pushback on that. But based, again, coming into when I talk about the parenting style itself, the right parenting style, the authoritative parenting style, and everything, all the themes go along with that, the child's got to come into agreement with that. So balanced dog training, when I talk about balanced dog training, the confusion of balanced dog training represents bouncing back and forth between, 2 parenting styles. But again, approaching a relationship problem as a learning-based exercise, motivating responses that way. So when control is manifesting, it's about motivating, not about intercepting. Okay, it's not about, when I talk about intercepting, it's not about influence, being proactive with intercepting a dog's state of mind. It's about motivating, trying to change the focus of a dog. Think about that. This is the bribery issue. Okay, so think about the interplay of learning, the application of learning through using a motivating agent to change the direction, the focus of a dog's state of mind, not intercepting. So here, you hear Penrith talking about, alluding to, intercepting, but he's also playing off of the 4 quadrants at the same time. If you listen to the confused, way in which influence itself is defined here, it doesn't line up.
Anything can do that. A flat collar can do that. You could hang a dog with a flat collar if you were that way inclined. A remote training collar, I don't need to go and spend money on a piece of kit like that if my intention is to cause harm, or it's still making
my hand shake a little bit.
Well, that's something that I've never.
So right here, and again, this is a problem too when, collars, you talk about these, some of these studies on the role of collars, influence, adversives. Those studies can't line up and don't line up anyway, because the social, the study in terms of dogs as social animals, the social aspect of that, how that connects, the interplay between other dogs and humans, that's not aligned the right way to even line the study up properly in terms of the role of influence. Okay, it has to connect, it has to align at the social level first. The foundation has to be right. So you get certain reactions from dogs by way of these collars. Well, guess what? Those reactions are going to be interpreted the wrong way. Okay, so you have, the human here with the hand shaking. Well, it's not even a proper application of influence itself isn't defined properly by way of a proper, the process itself's got to line up. This is why, again, you get these, so you get all this debate about, and then it plays into this whole thing about, I talk about, you talk about even the context of agreeableness. By way, I talk about the themes of bribery, accommodation, negotiation, using motivating agents, using treats to gain the agreeableness of a dog. It's about relationship. It's about control. That's why dogs that are gaining control in the relationship can look can look balanced. That's why a dog can look happy, tails wagging before they bite somebody. Okay, so you have to understand that it's about depth of relationship. You have to connect all the dots properly in order to arrive at a proper understanding as to what defines influence, what defines a process, the context of certain responses. It's no different, again, that's why I keep bringing up the parenting example. As a child becomes more and more selfish, guess what? Behavioral issues escalate. But again, at the social level, you have to tie in the parental role the right way. So when you hear balanced dog trainers talking about certain things, it's all disconnected. That's why they can't reconcile it.
Encountered, I wouldn't know about that. But a lot of the time, anticipatory adrenaline.
Yeah, and I suppose I knew it was happening.
Yeah.
The dog wouldn't necessarily know. But I suppose the point is, eventually, you don't need to use it all the time because it's muscle memory, is it? That
The
they
point as well
remember
is that you are looking at it as a punitive sense. So you're looking at it as an after-the-event consequence, which is one slice
so is this a
of a remote
punishment rather than a prevention?
Well, anything that follows a behaviour with the intention of reducing the likelihood.
See, in the same word, so balanced dog trainers will use the word behavior, it doesn't apply. It's control manifesting, okay? So, when you start to define a dog's, how a dog's state of mind properly, just like, again, think about the selfish child. As the child becomes more and more selfish, behavior issues escalate. Balanced dog trainers, again, they don't even define a dog's state of mind the right way. They talk about behavior, in a very kind of superficial way, but they don't even, connect dots properly. So to say anything to stop a behavior, no, it's a controls manifesting. This is why they're caught in this trap, because you hear in a moment, you're going to hear, this, individual from Dogs Trust challenge Penrith directly. But again, pay attention to the host's responses as, again, just consider they're getting the information, they're hearing this, what their response is going to be here in a moment too.
Of that immediately preceding behaviour is technically termed.
So what he seems to be saying is, it's not that bad and it works, and it's better than the alternative, which is your dog being squashed by a lorry. I have to say I'm not convinced. It seems to me to be unnecessarily cruel, and I'd rather have a dog putting on the lead.
So right here it is. So picture this host representing a member of the public based on the information, right? They're getting, saying, well, I'm not convinced. Well, who would be convinced? Because again, defining the role of influence, I talk about, you talk about making a different choice versus intercepting a dog's state of mind in terms of, again, even reconcile what, in terms that you're dealing with a relationship problem. Okay, but I understand that the pivot point here, everything pivots on the process itself, defining it as a learning-based exercise and using treats and using motivating agents to redirect, to get a dog to respond differently. See, this is where the confusion is in, saying, because this is going to come up here in a moment.
Than a dog that's jumping on a shock. You tell me why you think it's cruel.
The argument that it's necessary actually is not a valid one, because we know through research and lots of practice that actually we can train dogs not to run out into the road without using these kinds of devices. So
there it is. We can train dogs to make a different choice. Okay, respond differently. So we talk about the role of influence intercepting, as controls manifesting. Well, that's not how this is being explained or packaged up. Because balanced dog trainers are in agreement. Okay, that trains a learning-based exercise. They're in agreement about, getting dogs to response that way. They put the same, again, emphasis and focus on response at the beginning, assuming those responses can be trusted. Totally inherently flawed. I talk about that. So again, my encouragement is, okay, as you see these device bans happening worldwide, there's a reason for it. Just like there's a reason why this host would say, I'm not convinced. Because people are not getting the right information, not understanding what defines a process, not understanding the role of influence, not understanding the social aspect of how a dog's decision-making process is governed, not understanding, again, when I talk about an intentional interaction-based approach. That's why, again, when balanced dog trainers, when they look at someone like me who's interacting with dogs, the way I interact with dogs, guess what they label me as? A compulsion trainer, a force trainer. Well, why are they using that language? And why do they sound just like force-free dog trainers? Well, because they're in agreement with the same idea. Okay, so just think about it. And this is why they're losing their tools. They can't stop it. So again, my encouragement, anyone who's looking at what's going on in the dog training world, understand there's no accidents or coincidences here. Okay, this is all happening for a reason. This is all escalating. And it's not in a good way. Understand the force-free movement taking over is not a good thing. But in terms of what this idea represents, it's an ideology, it's a type of belief system. It's going to reach its ultimate fulfillment, and balanced dog trainers are going to get kicked off the fence. They're playing both sides. They've been playing both sides since the beginning. But now, again, as things kind of like the perfect storm, as things escalate, you're seeing it. Attitudes of society changing, permissive parenting on the rise. This has a spillover effect. But you have to actually get into the specifics as to, what defines a process. What's the role of influence? Reconcile a dog's decision-making process. But carry this all over to the parenting example. All starts to make sense why the dog training world is in the state that it's in. So my encouragement, check my website, lots of great information. I talk about not just the problem, but the solution by way of an intentional interaction-based approach. Thanks for watching.